Okay, we're going to reconvene the meeting. We're going to start at the projected capital costs of Parks and Recreation. Does everybody have it open and available? I think we're on page 119 of 175. The first item for discussion is the Arc Flash study, and it's a discretionary reserve of $5,000. Is there any comments or questions, council? Okay, well,
It's not a reserve.
it says under discretionary reserve, does it not? Second row? Right there.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I was looking at the no ahead of it. Okay, sorry, my apologies.
Yep. No problem. So,
So we're doing New York, okay.
yeah, we're doing the ORC, yep. So the second item is the ORC equipment. It's a reserve contribution for $5,000. Any comments or questions? Again, ORC facility improvements, it's a reserve contribution for 2020 of $10,000. Any questions or concerns? The next item is infrared scanning of equipment. This is a discretionary reserve item for $2,000. Any questions or comments? Councillor Roth?
What is an infrared scanning? Is that for the pipes under the,
No, it's still electrical.
oh,
Scanning of your electrical components.
Hotspots.
Your main components.
okay. Is there any way we could scan the pipes underneath the pad?
For what?
Leaks, blockages? Just a question. I don't know if.
Yeah, I'm not
Question.
100% sure, but I mean, they camera sewer pipes, so I'm sure you could probably put a camera down in there at some point. Because the header is all down that one side, so.
Yeah, well, the only reason I bring that up, and it doesn't have to be at any year's budget, it's just, I know the Optimists still have money for the York, and I know they'd like to put it toward a better refrigeration unit. But before we would do that, we'd have to make sure the pipes are okay, right?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the pipes and the best site that you would see if there was going to be an issue is that we would be continually adding brine to the system because you're losing it somewhere.
Yeah.
And but we don't see that anywhere. So, other than your normal evaporation stuff in the storage tank, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Next item is for Parks. It's Parks Infrastructure. It's $25,000. Any questions or comments? I have none. Okay, so also Parks Equipment. This is a reserve contribution of $5,000. Any questions or comments? Pickup truck, transfer from Public Works, so no impact on that. Now to PCC. The Arc Flash study. This is a discretionary reserve as well for $5,000. Any comments or questions? No. PCC equipment is a tax levy in 2020 for $5,000. Any questions or comments? Oh, carry on. PCC facility improvements, levy of $10,000. Any questions or comments? None. Next one is infrared scanning equipment, which we just discussed. $2,000 to discretionary reserve. Any questions or comments? We have building condition assessment for $5,000 discretionary reserve. Any questions or comments? I don't see none. All right, so carrying on to Public Works. The Aberfoyle sidewalks, we have a funding type grant of $10,000 and a levy of $90,000 for a total of $100,000. Any questions or comments?
Is that all associated with the work that's being done in Brock Road?
That is correct. And I mean, to throw it into 2020, we've been moving it from year to year because we still don't have confirmation of actually when they are coming through. As we know, we've just started seeing the plans and that, so it's hard to say if 2020 is going to be the year, for sure.
Any other? Councilor Homer?
To that point, didn't we were all at that public meeting, they're saying it's this year, 2019. Now, aren't they?
Yeah, but the sidewalks usually come after the road works.
My understanding, talking with the county engineers and their consulting engineers, is that they may not come through Aberfoyle in 2019. They may be concentrating on the roundabout at Gilmore and coming down, like coming from where they left off at McLean to the roundabout and then just down before they come into Aberfoyle. There's still, from my understanding, there's still a lot in limbo as far as some properties that still need to be dealt with and some design challenges as well in the roundabouts. So they're not exactly sure where they're gonna go at this point. That's my understanding anyways.
Next item is the backhoe for $125,000. Any questions or concerns?
The general question applies to all the equipment that we're purchasing. Resale value of these old assets. I understand they're not included in the revenue side of all this equipment we're purchasing. Shouldn't they be included, especially when we get into asset management? You're looking at, say, $100,000 for a dump truck, and then if you can get $20,000 for your existing, that's a pretty good chunk of change that you can avoid taxes levy on.
Residual value.
Is that question directed to the director or
CFO?
So currently, you're correct that it's just the gross capital cost of the project. I'm not sure if we're able to estimate what the different trucks will have as a resale value. I'm not sure. Don, can you elaborate?
All the equipment that we've replaced in my term here has gone to auction. It's pretty hard to put a value on that when you're sending something to auction.
Okay, in the BMO report, you cite residual value for all these that you've experienced.
Correct.
In order of whatever it is. Even if we go with those numbers, that's something but I'm not concerned about here. I'm concerned asset management plan. I really don't want to have a percentage increase on taxes if the residual value will avoid that.
Right. No, and I understand that. And if, like the backhoe that's due, if, we find whoever we're going to deal with and we can get a trade-in value on that, I think that is an asset that you could go that way with that. The same as the 1-ton truck, you could do that as well on a trade-in value. But as far as the larger stuff, dealers on tandem trucks are not going to look at that stuff as a trade-in value. So you're correct. I mean, we could estimate what we think we're going to get out of auction, but it's also my understanding that when we get the funding from the auction, it goes back into the equipment replacement reserve.
Yes, that has been, I think we have started, as part of our capital budget sheets, including the resale value, like, for example, the lawnmower that was purchased in Parks.
Correct.
So we can incorporate it as part of the capital budget sheets, and if Don can provide, if Don and I can work on putting estimates on some of the resale values for some of the equipment in the capital forecast,
Yeah,
We can include
We can
that.
definitely do that,
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
That'll be my motion once we get through this.
Any other question or comments on the backhoe? Okay, so again, tandem dump truck for $250,000. Questions and comments, I'm sure we'll treat it similarly to the backhoe where we'll have some, residual value, but any comments or questions? Okay, next one is traffic count study for $10,000 out of a levy and $15,000 restricted reserve for a total of $25,000. Any questions or comments? Jessica?
This is this would be what is required in order for us to do our asset management for the,
So our asset management program includes different classifications for roads based on the traffic volume of the roads. And so I know as part of the work that we did with urban and environmental management, we haven't had a recent traffic count done on most of our roads. And so one of their recommendation is to complete this. And then we can ensure that all of our roads are appropriately classified as 3, 4, or 5.
okay, gotcha.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, the next one is Public Works Replace and Restoration for $25,000 on the tax levy. Any comments or questions? No? Okay, next one is Public Works Equipment, $350,000. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I discussed this briefly with staff, like, we got 350 this year, you got, I think, 250 the next year, another 200 the year after. It seems like we get a lot all at once. Is there a way of spreading this out that sort of evens the hit type of thing, or is it necessary to go at this rate to save enough money for the equipment at a later date?
So Councillor Sapoulis, I looked at the most recent report that we did as it related to the balances in our restricted and discretionary reserves, and what's included in there as a contribution to the reserve is in order to negate the negative balances in those reserves for those specific years.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Dump truck, 1 ton, 305, $100,000. Any comments or questions? Pickup truck director, half ton, $40,000. Any comments or questions? Sure.
I have a comment.
Counselor?
I'd like to see that line come right out of there. I don't think we should provide a half-ton truck to a director. No offense, Tom.
Untaken.
You negotiated that deal.
But at the end of the day, whether the director takes it home or not, he's also gonna, or they will also need a vehicle to drive around at the township.
A lot of pickup trucks around here. I'm sure we can find one.
You'd be hard pressed to find a vacant one at any given time.
Okay.
Counselor Bowler?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify here, we're talking maybe two different things here. I think Councillor Roth's concern is the fact that the road director takes the truck home at night, but I'm hearing from the director that the director still needs the truck when they're here to do their job.
That is correct.
Your concern is the benefit of taking it home at night?
Well, unless it's for a specific reason, absolutely.
So that'd be up
So
to,
yeah, and I think we can have that discussion in 2020 or next year for 2020. But yeah, that's kind of the idea.
so it isn't the problem that the director has a truck to use when they're here, it's that they have a truck to take home?
Depends what they're using it for when they're here, I guess.
Yeah, okay. Okay. That's, I want to make sure I don't confuse the two,
Yeah,
because I see
well,
them as
yeah.
somewhat different. Thank you.
Counselor Sapoulis?
Sorry, go ahead. You can go ahead.
I'd like to suggest that we look at leasing when this item comes up for budgeting purposes too, what the anticipated usage will be for whoever is going to use this truck, and does it make more economical sense to lease as opposed to buy outright? So that'll be for next year.
Counselor Goya?
Is this the truck that you would use to do your daily road inspections?
I do perform daily road inspections some weeks as well, depending on how busy staff are as well.
And this would be the truck that
Of
you
course.
would be using?
Yeah. And just to add on to Councillor Sapoulis's idea of leasing, keep in mind that this truck also, after 5 years, goes to the Parks Department as well. This is where it moves.
That's something to factor in, I can
Yeah.
understand. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I believe you need a truck. I think it's industry standard that our director has a pickup truck at home. You need a pickup here to execute your daily duties, whether it be meeting your staff or somebody emailing you and with a concern. I can't see you going out in the parking lot and hoping there's a truck there.
Correct.
So I would like to leave this inside the budget for now. Those are just my thoughts. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Okay, next item. Bridge and culvert inspections, $7,500. Any comments or questions? No. Okay. Current Crescent Stormwater Management Facility, $150,000. Any comments or questions?
Just, what's the nature of this work for $150,000?
It's a total rehab of the storm pond, going in for silt removal, as well as This one entails a lot of brushing, a lot of cleanup. There actually is no entrance into the storm pond, so an entrance would have to be created as well. But mainly the silt removal is where the cost is.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, okay. All right, concession 1, Side Road 20 South to concession 7, 49,000, correction, 520,000 in total with 3 different budget lines there, 168,923 for funding grants, 49,957 levy, and 301,120 for restricted reserves. Any questions or comments on that project? Councillor Bulmer?
This is Little Bridge, this is the entrance to Slavinsky Park, correct?
No, concession 1 we're speaking about?
Oh, okay.
It's just to pulverize and pave.
Okay, sorry, I'm on the wrong line.
Just a general question. Are there any border projects for this year? Not that I'll make my comment whenever the first one's likely to come up. Border projects, in other words, a project that's on our boundary that's to be shared between us and somebody else. I understand it's not budgeted in here from your sheets, and yet I understand the asset management plan includes a number, so I'm trying to get it done.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any potentials at this time from any of our boundary agreements for any year.
Okay.
Yeah. Not saying that they surprisably can't come up, but I haven't received notice of anybody looking for additional funding.
I guess a question for the CFO. Are we including costing for these border projects in our asset management plan?
The asset management plan does include the costs associated with boundary road projects that meet the PCI levels that we had indicated, I think 60, 65 or 60, depending on what class of road it is, at 50% of the cost. Same with bridges and culverts.
So don't you think we should include this in these budget sheets as well?
As we go through completing the asset management program, there will be that work to compare what's in the asset management program to what's in the budget. And yes, I do agree that if it's in the asset management program, then it should be in your capital budget and forecast.
Councillor Bulmer?
Yeah, just, if I recall, not all our boundary agreements are the same either. Sometimes we do 100% on so many kilometers, and they take 100% of so many kilometers. And some we do 50% on everything. Is that, they're not all the same, are they?
Yeah, they're basically all the same. You're correct on the 100%, but that's not any capital cost. That's just routine maintenance and patrol. Anytime there's a capital expense going to be looked at, either party has that option.
Oh, 50%, okay.
Yeah, that's the standard agreement.
Okay, so it is, they are the same, it's just one, capital is dealt different than operation?
Correct.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Councillor Lewis? Okay, the next item we're going to discuss is the Parks and Recreation on page 121. We're skipping over the general government right now, and it starts with the ORC. And everybody's on the page. It's the ORC equipment, and it has a tax levy of $10,000. And just looking for any questions or comments on that. Is there? Okay, just make sure everybody is on the right page. All right, next one is ORC facility improvements. It's $10,000 again on the levy. Any comments or questions? No. Now on to parks. It says parks infrastructure, $25,000. Any comments or questions? I have one for the director. That's just general life expectancy replacement of items, or?
Yeah, the parks equipment reserve, that's just contributing to the reserve, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so and then again, parks equipment, it's a reserve, it's again $5,000. Any questions or comments? Nope. All right, phase 1 of Parks Master Plan. It's a grant type of $456,239 with a levy of $95,667 and restricted reserve use of $150,000 for a total of $701,907. Any comments and questions? Councillor Spoulos?
Yes, I'd like to suggest that we move all these Phase 1 and Phase 2 projects that they are not levy funded at all. In other words, they come from either grants or the parkland dedication fee. Because I think these are costs that should be borne by the parkland dedication fee. We're going to get a lot of money from the parkland dedication fee, and it's an opportunity to use that here.
Do we need a seconder so we can discuss that? We have a seconder,
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Palmer. And we'll open that for discussion. Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea, and because some of these are, I gotta say, pretty high, pie in the sky. I don't think we have any plans in the short term to move the ball diamond, which I think was part of Phase 2. And we're looking right now, Phase 1 doesn't include any levy impact, so it reflects reality. They're there if anybody wants to move ahead on them, but I think Councillor Sapoulis has got a good idea here.
Councillor Wida?
No, I'm good.
Councillor Spills?
Yeah, question for staff. Is this included in the asset management plan as well?
No, this is not, because it's not replacement of your current infrastructure.
Yeah, no, but the 95 will certainly have an impact on our levy, so if we can get it out of there and save that money for something else, like fire stations or whatever the case may be, like, to me, this is a secondary matter.
Councillor Roth?
I agree.
I agree as well. I feel that these Phase 1 and Phase 2 is, it's a lot of money for our municipality, and if we can remove part of this levy and, and find alternative sources, like the park dedication fees and such. So, do we want to take a vote on that now, or do it once we're,
So as part of the reporting as it relates to the balances in our restricted reserves, I will look at alternative sources of funding this to see how the cash in lieu of parkland reserve is over the next 10 years, okay, based on our forecast. And
Okay, and so, but for right now, for the purposes of the motion that's on the floor, so Mary, just correct me, that's moving it to a restricted reserve, because cash in lieu of parkland is a restricted reserve.
yes, cash in lieu of parkland is a restricted reserve, but it depends on what the balance is in that reserve.
Yeah, but for now, we'll move it, but Mary will then have to report what the implications are on your actual restricted reserve and what the balance is in the future, assuming that it gets approved by council.
And are we going out to the public this year to get their input on this? Is it this, scheduled for this year, or is it another year? Like, I thought we're taking the entire program out to the public at one time, Phase 1, Phase 2.
That was scheduled, I think, for 2019.
Yes.
All right, so
Yep.
then we'll get feedback as well, which will
Yep.
help make our decision.
okay, any other comments or questions? Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, just on that, going to the public, I think the original plan was to go to public with the revised plan of moving everything back there, but now we've changed that as well. We're moving ahead with the soccer pitch, so I guess what we're going to the public with is significantly different now than what we were going to go to the public with before. Is that not correct? Just to clarify?
No, my understanding was to move forward, the council had authorized proceeding funding approval contingent
Yeah.
with the soccer fields.
Right.
However, it was still, my understanding, council's intention to get feedback on the overall plan.
The overall plan,
Yep.
okay, sure. And then part of that would be this change in the funding, that it would all be funded the same way as the soccer pitch. That'd be the
That'd
only
be my intention, yeah.
Yeah, okay, no, and that'd be good to go to the public with that, okay,
Okay,
good, thank you.
great, so I'll vote on that. So all in favor? Carried. Okay, so the next item is tree inspections, $6,000. Any questions or comments on that? No? Okay. And now on to the PCC. PCC equipment, tax levy of $5,000. Any questions or concerns? No. PCC facility improvements, $10,000. That's discretionary, that's a reserve. Any comments? No. Kitchen renovation, including kitchen, no washroom. We're looking at a grant of 10,000 potentially, 45,000 discretionary reserve, 45,000 restricted reserves for a total of 100,000. Any comments or questions? Councillor Bulmer?
It just seems awfully high, but I guess we're talking new flooring, is this like a right back to the walls and start again? Because it's,
Yeah, pretty much. We're looking to take everything out of the kitchen and redo it, cabinets, countertops, plumbing. It's got some pretty old, a pretty old heating system in the kitchen that actually isn't even tied to the HVAC system, so we're still running electric heaters in there as well. And it would also include the bar area and also the washroom off the kitchen as well.
as long as, I just want to make sure we maintain, we continue to put in what I would consider to be, the flooring in there is good. I think it was industrial grade kind of, we recognize this is a heavily used area when we do it. So maybe 100,000 is appropriate for 3 spaces, but
It'll be treated as a commercial kitchen.
good. Yeah. And will it be tied into the other heating system then? That's
That's
part of the price?
That we don't know yet. We don't have a confirmed answer on that. If not, what are our options to bring in some different, maybe better economical heaters, even electric heaters.
Is that for,
compared to
I
what
mean,
was there.
you're talking the entire piece from that end of the hall, the bar, the kitchen, the washrooms, all those things are on electric heaters as opposed to the HVAC?
Correct.
And when you talk about the washroom, you're talking about the public washrooms as well, or just the one washroom?
Just the one.
Okay. Super, thanks.
Any other questions or concerns? I have one for the director. It says here, including kitchen, no washroom, but you're stating that it is.
Contribution.
Oh, that's the reserve. Oh, got you. Sorry, my bad. The kitchen being replaced, are you going to replace the commercial grade kitchen as well in the fire suppression hood, or is that?
We'll look and have the suppression checked and insured. I mean, we have put some money into that system over the last couple of years as it is. So obviously, we just don't want to go in and rip it out if we don't need to.
Is that also for the ovens? Are they you're gonna try and save them to save some?
Oh,
costs,
God,
or-
yeah, because they are new.
So this is, okay, they are.
Yeah,
So this is just a cosmetic.
Yeah, the two stoves are, I think, probably 3 or 4 years old now. We've bought one new cooler fridge since then, which is new as well. So the major appliance we'll probably have to look at would probably be the second cooler and probably a new dishwasher.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I think that concludes
Is that dishwasher about 15, 12, 15 years old?
2020. There we go. All right. All right, so now moving on to Public Works, Concession 2, 2A to Side Road 20. We have a grant looking at $168,923 with $39,366 for levy, restricted reserves of $311,011 for a total of $519,300. Any questions or concerns on that reconstruction? I have none. Concession 7, McLean Road to Concession 2A. It's a levy of $208,900. Any questions or concerns?
I assume it's going to be tied into the work by MTO.
Yeah, we obviously not going to do anything till the new bridge is in at that section and go from there.
Okay, would it make sense to see if they would want to do that section of road for us when they do everything else? Economies of scale?
Could always ask the question, yeah, of course.
Any other questions or concerns? I have one. Years ago, when there was a gravel pit on Victoria Road, and they would haul down into the Dufferin site down 34, it was my understanding that the gravel company paid to, recondition County Road 34. I understand it's a county road. But this is a main route for the aggregate industry. Do they have any responsibility to maintain this road or resurface it? They're the ones doing most of the damage to it, so I'm curious if maybe we should ask them the question as well. As Councillor Sapoulis said, I know they want to give more, so is there a possibility there that the gravel industry could resurface that road?
I would say anything's possible. My first response would be, no, they're not going to because they originally did it. My understanding is that they contributed the money to originally put it to a haul road. And I don't likely see them, but you
When,
can always ask the question.
when they were resurfacing 34, was that just part of the pit lights? That was before your time possibly?
Yeah, 34, I'm not sure. It's no different than we just resurfaced Victoria Road from 34 to the pit entrance. And we did it as a haul road, which was never done before as a haul road. And that was at our cost.
All right. That's all I have. Any other questions or concerns? All right. Next item is tandem dump truck 301. Discretionary reserve, 250,000. Any comments or questions? Councilor Lewis?
How many dump trucks do we have? Two?
We have 4, 2 tandems and 2 single axles.
We need all 4?
Yes, we do.
For snowplow.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay. All right, next item is Leslie Road West, Watson Road South to Mountsburg for a levy of 20,000. Any questions or concerns? No, sir. Public Works Replace and Restoration for $25,000. Any comments or questions? I don't see none. Public Works Equipment, $200,000 for any comments or questions? No. Good. Carroll Pond and Lessick Jassel Municipal Drain, closed circuit television inspection, 16,000. Any comments or questions? Yes, no?
I do, actually.
Councilor Goya?
Is this something that's required for us to do? Or is this just preventative, to do it, just to be proactive and being preventative of it?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a strong recommendation from our engineers. This is the Carroll Pond that we looked at
Yep.
the other day, and I
Yep.
mentioned about where it outlets into CPM or CBM. So this would be cammering that pipe to ensure, like I mentioned, there's always that possibility of separation in that pipe work, silt collection. And this, the last time it was done, the original time it was done is when the township took ownership of it. It was cambered then and hasn't been since.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Next item is a single axle dump truck, 304, for 250,000. Any comments, questions? No. My only comment is if we can buy a tandem for 250, hopefully, like, we should be buying tandems instead of single axles, but we can address that in 2021.
I'm pretty confident you would see that wording changed when it came to that time.
So next item is bridge and culvert inspections, $7,500. Any comments or questions? All right. Okay, Fox Run Drive, Stormwater Management Facility, $165,000. Any comments or questions?
Just what is this work about?
It's pretty much identical to Kerr Crescent. This one was probably even in worse shape. They actually had trouble finding it. So that gives you an idea of the overgrowth in this area.
Maybe that's where we have the severance.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay. All right, Transportation Master Plan, including PCI updates. We have a $10,000 levy and a $15,000 restricted reserves for a total of $25,000. Any questions or comments? No? All right, we'll move on to the 2022 Parks and Rec. ORC equipment, so we're on page 123, just near the bottom. That's $10,000 for the levy. Any comments or questions? Councillor?
Yeah, in the interest of time, could we just go to these areas, and if anyone has a question, I'm sure we've all read it. To go down line by line, I'm not so sure it's serving any purpose, other than keeping us here for an awful long time.
Yeah.
I don't, we all know how to read. I don't think we have to have this read to us line by line. That's just a thought. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do, but I'd like to speed things up a bit here.
The suggestion I would have is any questions on this page, and then move on type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Move forward with that, so we'll just start there now. Thank you, Councillor Ruth. I'll get it one day. Okay, so on page, the 2022 capital plan, Summary, is there any question or concerns? It's for Public Works.
This is page 124?
Yes, correct.
No, no.
Any other? Okay. Oh, Ken.
I'm just going to, I do note, just for council's information, that the Phase 2 of the Parks Master Plan, so that'll be an item that will change that funding request for, just for council's information. Okay. Yep.
And the next page is the 2023 capital plan summary. And we have Parks and Recreation on there. We've already gone through. Are we going to address the general government? Or are we just doing
We'll
Parks
do
and-
it after
Okay.
we finish.
We'll just do the Parks and Rec. If we have any questions or concerns on that page.
What page you on?
We're on page 125 and just the bottom section. We're going to revisit the general government. Okay, any questions or concerns? Page 125. All right, so now we're going to go to the 2023, which is page 126, capital plan summary. This is for Public Works as well. And we have a question here, Councillor Skoulas.
Yes, the traffic calming on, at Morriston, I'm going to suggest we move that out until after we have the Morriston bypass in. I don't see any reason doing anything now until such time it's done.
We have a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, Councillor Moore. I'll let the
Okay, is there a year that you want us to move it to?
Year after the bypass.
Okay, I guess it's just,
It's just a placeholder.
just in term, yeah, I
I understand.
understand.
I'm
Like,
being
like you
facetious.
probably want to move it, maybe if you want to move it to the extent of your forecast, just so that it's not
Sure.
lost, because as people
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
places
Move it out to
change, then, yeah.
2026 or 28 or something like that.
Do you want me to move it to 2028, and then you can always move it forward if,
Sure. that sounds
okay,
good.
it's going, okay, so then I've noted it for 2028.
If we even decide to do it, I mean, it's so little. I hate to say it, but
Okay, so do we have to change the motion?
no.
We can just-
I've just amended it that we move the traffic calming streetscaping for Morriston from the 2023 capital plan to 2028.
Any discussion? Hey, Councillor Bomer?
Is that good? Yeah.
You're good.
Yep, that's fine.
All in favor? Carried. All right, page 127, we have the 2024. Actually, nope, we're going to skip that one. We're going to go right down to page 128. I think that's where we get to Parks and Rec. And we have any comments or questions on that page? No. Public Works is there at the bottom as well. Keep scrolling down, we go to page 129. And at the very bottom of 129, we have Parks and Rec again. Any comments or questions? No. Okay, on page 130, we have the 2025 capital plan for the end of Parks and Rec, and then the start of Public Works. Any questions or comments?
The only question is the director half-ton truck. Do we need to keep it in for the next director?
So,
I think, based on the discussion that I heard earlier, you were keeping it in for now, and you'll have further discussion in the future on it.
Okay, thank you.
okay, any other questions or comments? Okay. All right, page 131, we have Parks and Rec. And any questions or comments? Good.
The playground area at Boreham Park, is there a commitment on that date?
Can I indicate what it says in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan?
Certainly.
Okay.
Memorized.
Sorry, I'm just opening up my... What date is that in?
It's in 2026.
Page 130.
There's a recommendation in the Recreation and Parks Master Plan that indicates assessing opportunities to update and modernize the playground at Boreham Park with creative play equipment and barrier-free components. So there's no time constraint.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I have a question on the tennis courts. When I was campaigning, residents stated some real concerns about the tennis courts, about how they're sinking out of sight on the one side or something. Have we ever had any communications with the tennis club that there is a problem? Or-
I'm not recalling anything.
No,
I don't, I haven't
me
had
either.
anything.
Okay.
no.
I can speak to that over, if you like.
Counselor Bowler?
When I was in the rec committee, I think they've been reconstructed once. And there was a concern that's been a chronic problem since the day they were put in the one court. I guess the material underneath continues to sink. It's, they were another gift. That asset was a gift from the Optimist Club as well. And they've, I guess through grants, have over the years managed to get a lot of grants to maintain it. But it has been, I think it's only one of the 3 courts I've heard from members of this tennis club that is a problem.
Yeah, that is correct. And through the Parks Master Plan, it was identified that because the tennis courts are not available to the general public, that perhaps that third court that is not in the best of shape be fenced off and gated to allow public access outside of the tennis club itself. That was through the master plan for that.
Well, I think if they haven't said anything, we shouldn't say anything. I just had to ask that question because it seemed to be.
They have asked before regarding privacy, and with the fencing that's around it, be able to put in those, like some type of cover on the fencing, those plastic strips through. But the concern is, and from what I've heard regarding the fence when it was installed, the posts are not all that deep.
Wind load.
Yeah, and it's a pretty tall fence.
Yeah.
I would think that if you start covering that up, it may come down.
Just, okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is a whole contentious issue with the tennis club because I don't think anybody really knows who's controlling anything. But so I think the longer we could leave this alone, the better off we all are. But I just had to ask.
Good question.
Any other questions or comments?
No.
Okay, we'll go on to page 132. So the top of it is still Parks and Rec and then Public Works. Any questions or comments on that page? Oh, okay. We'll go on to the page 133 is 2027. We have Parks and Rec in here as well as Public Works. Any questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any. And page 134 is the end of that previous page. Any questions or comments? No. Okay, 2028 capital plan summary. And for Parks and Rec, sorry? Any questions or comments? Okay. Page 136 is Public Works. Any questions or comments on that one? No. Okay. Moving on to 137. That was a short one. Any questions? Comments? No. Okay. So all right.
Municipal office is next, so, municipal office, if I can.
I just want to make sure that we address the issue of resale of the old equipment, that we look at trying to get the numbers in as well.
Okay, is council okay if that's included in your next year's budget?
Yeah.
Just,
That's
is that
fine.
all
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We'll
yeah,
take
that's
that
fine.
direction?
Yeah, my concern is, I just really am sensitive to paying, asking for levy increase when there's some funds coming back.
Understood. We're okay. Well, I've got that noted. I will just say for council's information, because I know that you've raised the concerns, we'll have to follow up with our asset management consultants on the ability to include that information in the asset management plan. I'm not sure whether the legislation would permit that or not, but that's something that we'll follow up with them directly. Okay.
If I could just, and that value is captured in terms of the annual surplus that is then reallocated to reserves, which then is reflected by we don't then have to increase the levy the following year because of what we got back. So over time, it washes out to nothing. Am I not correct? We still acquire those funds, and it still has a levy impact because it goes into reserves.
Okay. My concern, Council Bowmer, is if we follow the asset management plan, we're going to be budgeting for something on a 10-year basis, and that's going to assume all the costs coming in when they come in, and there's no credit given for the items as the costs are incurred.
Understood.
And that means that you may be unnecessarily either asking for a loan or increasing the levy just to cover that off.
But
Can I just
yeah,
speak
I understand.
briefly for a
I'm
second?
just suggesting that balances off on the reserves will grow. Every time we oversave, we end up with a higher reserve, which means we don't have to save as much for the next one.
I just want to speak. I think what Councillor Sepoulis is trying to achieve is by incorporating the resale value of the vehicles, when we go to the public with the
revenue.
asset, we can have a 2.5% or 2 is what you're, and I understand what you're saying, that, that money is a wash, we'll get it back. I think it's just more the perception to the public that we've accounted for this resale value, and then with our asset management plan going forward, we can possibly have a lower number at the public information meeting. I think that's
What the main objective is.
That's the main, so.
You want to be credible when you go to the public and you say, I've included this, 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 this.
If we can have a lower number, that's going to be better for us.
Absolutely.
As long as we're very conservative on the estimate of what we're going to recover, I'd rather lowball what we're going to get for selling them. So we don't.
We do have historical numbers, and if we go lower than that, it's fine, as long as we have something in there.
Do we need a motion? Okay. So I think that's it for,
Well, actually, that was my error. I forgot that Don was responsible for municipal office section. So before we get there, I wanted to make sure that you give Don an especially hard time through the municipal office budget, since he has now submitted his retirement notice to me, and so we want to give him a good go out with a bang, right, Don? So as we
always leave
move
earlier.
forward here, we do have time for council, just so that you know. It won't be until the spring. However,
Want to go back to,
we want to make sure he has an exciting budget time through the last section of the municipal office. So we'll start with the 2019 capital municipal office section.
What page are we on?
67.
Pardon?
67,
67.
the bottom of it.
under general government.
Yes, but he'll go directly to the municipal office section.
All right, once everybody's on the right page, we'll start with the municipal office. So the first one is corporate office repairs of 25,000. Oh, we're going to do it by page. So is council okay with doing it by page for going forward?
Even the current year?
For the current year, you want to do it line by line?
no,
Current year, I don't care, but
I think if you ask if there's any questions on that part, you
All right, well, let's look at this page at page 67. Is there any comments or questions for the municipal office? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one general comment. If you look over the 10-year program, we're spending close to $600,000 renovating this building. And I look at it and say, does it make sense? Like, the building's what, over 30 years, it's getting close to 40 years old type of thing? And you start wondering, is there a point of inefficiency where you're paying more than had you gone forward and say, let's start new someplace sometime in the future, rather than spending all this money? Like 600,000 is a big number to spend.
Okay. So there is 393,000 in the capital budget and forecast for asset replacement projects, but then you're right, there's an additional 300,000 for contributions to discretionary reserves as it relates to the municipal office over the next 10 years. So we did complete a facility needs study in 2015, and basically it recommended that we budget 1.05 million for renovating and placing an addition for the office, which included fire and public works. The cost excluded taxes, site work, furniture, fixtures, equipment, permits, consulting costs. There are no inflationary impacts associated with that. It did not include an increase in the size or capacity of council chambers, and additional costs were not budgeted for the cost of a portable for staff for off-site works. So we had included these costs in the capital forecast. I believe it was from 2023 to maybe 2027 or something last year. However, we removed them from the forecast. Karen, if you want to elaborate more on this, that'd be great.
Okay, I don't have really much more to add. I have to let council know that I actually requested the Director of Finance to remove the replacement of this facility out of the forecast, just in recognition of the challenges that the township is facing from an asset management point of view. So that's all I have to say in terms of why it was removed. I guess taking into consideration, I think moving forward, once the township knows of, has a better handle, I guess, in terms of any type of growth potential with some of the changes that could or may not happen as it relates to the development of land, as it relates to the natural heritage system, as it relates to the secondary ag lands and prime ag lands. Like, I think the ability to fund a new township office is going to be difficult, very difficult. I thank you. I was having trouble finding the right words, but I think it's going to be quite challenging based on all the other assets that the township does have to maintain. But that's why it was removed, once I could see,
understand that,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's got to be a tipping point where it doesn't make
Yes,
sense
yeah.
anymore, so perhaps we can revisit it this next year.
Yeah, sure.
Any other?
I think something that may have to be looked at for the township office is possibly leasing a building.
That's a viable option as well, leasing.
Anyway, that's a long way away, I guess, but.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. We have to go,
2020?
what page is that on? Because it doesn't go right below that. I'll have to find the page.
Are you on it?
118, no, sorry, 118 it starts, 119.
All right. So, all right, so is everybody on?
Go ahead.
Good. All right, so we'll just look at this on these pages individually. And so we're at the 2020 capital plans summary for municipal office. Any questions or comments?
Just on the building condition assessment, the 5,000 there, perhaps we can look at this building, a little bit more detail on that study.
Is there a seconder for that? Any motion?
Sorry, can you perhaps
Well,
maybe just explain a
You're
bit
looking at
more?
building condition assessment, all you're going to be looking at, my understanding of building condition, you're going to look at the various components associated with the building, and not the big picture type of thing.
Okay, so you want us to look at the scope of the building condition assessment report that's to be
I want
done?
to look at the scope of, should we move, should we lease, that sort of thing.
Oh. In 2020? Okay.
So we need a motion for that?
So,
Or discuss it? Need a seconder for that to discuss it?
sure, I'll discuss it. I'll second it.
Councilor Wong.
So you want to expand the scope of the building condition assessment, but keep it the same year? That's just next year, like
This is
2020?
2020,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that'll be just, I'm only concerned about as we phase in our asset management plan, could we put it off? Because we just went through that, we just finished this with considering we couldn't afford to expand, we couldn't afford to move. To go back and go through it all again,
Okay, so this is just the building condition assessments, exactly how, Councillor Sepoulis, I think you said it looks at the different components of the building to
Yeah.
say when different items need to be replaced.
but I think I heard the motion on the floor is to expand it to look at
Leasing.
an addition and or leasing and moving again,
Exactly, yes. The 2015 study, more or less,
all over again, updated.
I'm okay, it doesn't have to be this year, we can do it in 2021, but I really do think we should look at it, and I like Councilor Watt's idea of even investigating leasing as well. Or lease to own, or whatever our model we want to pick. So I'll back off from 2020, and we can discuss it in 2020 for 2021.
Okay. Counselor Goyden, do you have a?
No, I was just going to say that might be a whole other assessment altogether,
Yeah, that's fine.
right? Yeah.
Okay, so, going on to the next page, we're on page 120, and actually, I don't see anything on there for that one. So skip that, go to page 121. There's the general government section there, if anybody has any questions or concerns.
Is that Mary's area?
There's still a municipal office section under the general government under 2022.
Oh, I see it, yes, okay, sorry.
Okay. There's just 2 lines there. So going on to page 122, I don't see anything. Okay, so on page 123, under general government, there's municipal office. If anybody has any questions or concerns. See any? Okay, page 125, in the middle of the page, we again have some municipal office. Any comments or questions? No. Okay, page 127, at the bottom, municipal office. Any questions or concerns? We're on to 2024, skip page 129. So page 129, there's one section there, 2 lines. Any comments or questions? No. So we'll skip to page 131. It's just a repetition of the previous page. Any questions or concerns? Again, this is repetitive, so on page 133, any comments or questions? It's the same as 135. There's looks like a roofing charge in there. So anybody have any questions or concerns? Okay.
Well, I guess that was really tough on him,
That was good.
We're afraid of them.
Yeah, well, congratulations on your retirement, Don. It was, whenever I had any dealings with you, you were professional, and I really appreciated all your support as a pesty constituent. So,
Okay, so that's done. I guess you're through.
Out.
You're out.
So when
now-
are you retiring, Todd?
The official date is May 31st,
May 31st?
but with time carried forward and time earned in 2019, my last day in the office will be April 26th.
Wow.
Unless it snows.
True.
I'm sure we'll be talking to you more about your retirement at a later date.
My door is always open.
There may be some questions on this stuff. Got it.
okay, yep. All right, so it looks like we're back to page 67. And we'll start with corporate and finance. Just give me a quick second to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, 67, you said?
Yep.
And I'll hand it over to our CFO.
Okay, so the computer equipment under corporate is just our regular 5-year replacement life cycle for computers. The pay equity study is the next item. The capital budget sheet basically says the purpose, but Karen, if you just wanted to elaborate more on that.
Okay, so council may recall that we had a pay equity study done in 2014. Mary's going to correct me if I say anything incorrectly. And it was originally included in the forecast, I think, for a 7-year period. I do want to let council know that I have had some members of staff come forward with respect to requesting that it be moved up particularly in the fire area, because of the, I guess, the pay in surrounding municipalities is somewhat not to the same scale as it would be here. It is recommended that it is done every 5 to 7 years. I do support moving forward doing it in this particular year. There have been studies done just recently, actually, in North Dumfries. So I did indicate to staff that did bring it forward that I would make the request to move it up. So that's why you see it in this particular budget year. And that's, you are obligated to do it. It is recommended between 5 and 7 years, so.
Counselor Bowman?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Is this considered capital because it lasts so long as opposed to operations?
So all of our studies are in capital, and they're, usually if it's more than 5,000, that's our threshold that we use to put it in capital. And it's also one time, so that's why it's not in operating.
Okay. And then the other piece was the recommendation was that the certain parts of it be updated, but I wasn't sure if that was meaning that it requires a full study. So are we proposing to do just updating the bands as suggested in the report, or are we proposing to do a whole new pay equity study? I couldn't quite tell the difference.
Well, you have to, it's to do the whole pay equity study.
Okay, so as they recommended to update the bands and things, that means to redo the study. When they said update, I can't remember the wording exactly, every 5 to 7 years. They said, I forget what the actual language was. But it didn't say to redo a pay equity study every 5 years. It said it sort of suggested a portion of it.
I think the capital budget sheet says that it was recommended that job evaluation, weighting and banding, and
Yeah.
salary structure be reviewed every 5 to 7 years. I'm assuming that's a full pay equity
It
study.
is,
Okay.
yeah. It's one and the same.
Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you so much.
I have a question. The pay equity study, does it compare salaries and wages with municipalities of the same size?
Yes. So you may have seen in the operating budget report, on an annual basis, we provide what the COLA is being proposed or what's been approved in previous years for several municipalities. And the report does state that they are all the ones that were used in our pay equity study, with the exception of the County of Wellington and Centre Wellington.
Okay. Because I think if it was not the case, I mean, obviously it's going to tell us that the bigger municipalities are, we're not equal to that.
They do use comparator municipalities.
Okay, okay.
Okay. I have nothing. Now, do we need to go through, do you want to just point out the highlights of the finances, or shall we go?
Sorry, I'm just going to go to, so we're on page
It's on page 60.
67. Okay, so the next two items are just contributions to reserve, so the corporate IT software and corporate IT hardware. The next item is the marketing and branding implementation, and so there was a capital budget sheet as it related to that. And the items in there relate to some of the preliminary recommendations of the logo and brand design that's going to be presented to council on December 19th. But as you can see in that capital budget sheet, most of it is proposed to be grant funded. But if you have any specific questions about that capital budget sheet, please just ask.
Councilor Bulmer?
Thank you. Yeah, this was interesting because it's called Destination Marketing and Branding, and I was hoping to see something in here that would help improve revenues at our, rentals of our facilities earlier on, to sort of help fund the program later on. So I was disappointed there wasn't something that we saw here that talked about how we can better improve the awareness and availability of our facilities. I know even at the farmer's market, people will ask when you're there, how can you rent this place? Or there's no materials there for anybody who's a visitor, either there or the community center. And I thought, is it possible we can talk to the people that are, I don't know if this is for the branding consultants that can we move something up, before we start replacing shirts and replacing decals on trucks, can we do some marketing to improve the revenue situation before we spend more money, even if it's through grants? It's always somebody's money. Does that make sense?
Well, the marketing of the township facility is a separate item from the marketing and branding exercise. Perhaps maybe the word marketing is used in this context for the purpose of creating the Puss Lynch identity and then having that recognition of township facilities, staff, vehicles. With respect to marketing the facility itself, that has not been included in the scope of this particular capital item.
Yeah, I guess that'd be my disappointment. But otherwise, I guess it's, if I read this correctly, are we also talking about they didn't use the word decals, livery, I guess, on the vehicles. Are we just going to phase that in over time, or is it proposed that they all get done all at once?
That will all be dependent on whether the funding comes through.
Because it just seems, I understand, so if we get the funding, we'll do it all at once. If we don't, we'll do them one at a time.
Yep.
Okay. And same thing with, I'd hate to, I think of myself, I wouldn't want to be throwing perfectly good stuff out just because the logo's changed on it. It's still perfectly functional. But I do like the fact that the update to the website's there. I think that's, now that we've had a chance to work with the new website for 4 years, I think there's lots of things that people have found out. I know I've heard several complaints from people about the search function doesn't work, on the website, so.
Well, if they have those complaints, it would be appreciated if you could direct them to the township staff so that we could follow up with the vendor, because we do work closely with them to ensure that it is a functional website.
Yeah.
And so if any member of council is getting a complaint of that nature, it's important that you forward them on to us so that we can actually follow up with the vendor. And I will add just on that particular note that you'll probably find that every 5 years your website is out of
Oh, yeah.
date.
That's right. I think it's due, it's
Yeah.
time. So, but there'll be some public notice on that, so if there are other comments or concerns that we don't know about, there'll be we can capture those then through that process, I guess. Okay. Super.
I have a question about the website, as it is part of this sort of marketing package we're talking about, that it's a total of $17,000 towards the website, which I am not a website designer by any means, but that seems like a lot of money to update the website. So is this basically building it from scratch and redoing the whole thing, or is this just what it is cost? Like, this is just the average cost?
So the first quote we got from the website provider was $30,000. So we went back to them, and they were able to decrease it just based on using other templates that they use for other municipalities. eSolutions is the provider for many municipalities. And so this is to make it mobile, so that it can be viewed in the same way on your mobile device as it is on the desktop. When we did it in 2014, they indicated that the technology has changed significantly from 2014 to present, and that's why it's not fully responsive. Karen, were you going to say something, or?
I would just add that it's definitely a fair point that you raised, Councillor Goyda. We had the same concern when the amount came in. I do think moving forward, we will have to include funding in the budget just for a website design, because as Councillor Bulmer has raised and as Councillor Goyda has just suggested, within a 5-year period, they do become out of date and the technology changes so quickly. And Mary is correct that there are a number of municipalities that use eSolutions as to host their website, but I suspect moving forward there may be other opportunities that the township may be able to take advantage of, and perhaps it's not necessarily through eSolutions in the future, that may be have better costing options for us.
That being said, does it make sense to separate it out as a separate item and perhaps defer it for a year?
Well, That's a good point, but I'm going to let you know that I think based on the projects that we have coming forward in the next few years, that it's not an undertaking that staff would be able to do within the next 3 years.
Okay.
Easily, I think I can say that with the projects that are coming forward, like with your procurement bylaw review, with you look at voice over IP, there's just not resources available to move issuing an RFP for a total website redesign within the next 3 years. And I'm looking to Mary just to confirm whether that would be the case or not.
In 2014, when we did do the full website revamp project, it required significant resources.
I was just going to say, does it take a lot of staff time?
Yes, it does.
to-
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause it's the content and what you're putting into it. So that was a project that did take a considerable amount of time, and I know that within the next 2 or 3 years, there isn't the time within the current projects that are lined up to facilitate doing a full website redesign.
Is there any cost savings in keeping the content as is, but giving it a different, I guess, back end so that it can be accommodated with tablets and iPhones and things like that? Or is that just,
The content does remain, go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, so this quoted
Mary.
cost is to make it responsive using a iPhone or a tablet.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily changing all the content
Right.
or
And it's also,
design of it or anything?
it is updating the design so it's cohesive with the, whatever the new logo and brand is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
No, just a comment. I support moving ahead with this. It's important to maintain the momentum and keep the business here. The only one comment I have is whether or not it makes sense to put the signs up until, or wait until the Brock Road is repaved type of thing. That's the only comment I have.
Okay, yeah, we'll, as we move forward, we will certainly be mindful as to timing of the installation of signs, et cetera.
So,
Okay. Sorry, let me just go back to I was just on the capital budget sheet. Okay, so the next item is the GIS integration of the new comprehensive zoning bylaw. Do you have any questions about the capital budget sheet?
yeah, Councilor Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. One is, I'm sure when we do this, the actual planning document, the bylaw itself will remain as the actual bylaw. So any errors that occur in the in this, well, the staff will still have to refer to the paper version, I guess. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a convenience primarily for high-level reviews of things, but we'll still refer back to the paper one. And I guess, not that, I think it's a great idea, by the way. I think it's going to make it easier for everybody. It'll save staff asking a lot of questions. But I'm wondering about the timing of it, since the bylaw is currently been appealed, and we're likely going to have our first housekeeping amendment very shortly after we get through that appeal. Is it possible just to put this off until we get the actual final? Is there any value in waiting until we have it through the first housekeeping amendment to avoid getting it in place and having to go and amend it that quickly? Because I know usually when bylaws go in, a zoning bylaw especially, when you rewrite one, staff are going to find all sorts of things prior to that first housekeeping amendment, just to save the duplication of work.
Well, I would still recommend that it move forward in 2019, because if we bring forward our intent is to bring forward a housekeeping amendment in 2019.
Okay, good.
And since it is the county that is working on this project with us, we would ensure that we were working seamlessly with the housekeeping amendment to provide the current information on the GIS system through the integration of this information onto the website.
Oh, super. So what you're telling me is this is something that can be updated internally. We can update the GIS information then,
Well, the county can.
or the county can. Oh, that's great. That satisfies all my concerns, because it isn't something we have to recontract somebody to do it.
No.
Okay, super. Thank you so much.
Just a question, when you say building surplus reserve, is this the building department surplus
Yes.
reserve?
It is.
Okay. Is there a way of maximizing that, or is this the most we can get out of that?
We did, as When we put forward projects that are building reserve funded, we do take into consideration the amount of time or percentage of time that the building department staff will utilize the system. So that's what we thought was a fair representation of that, because they will utilize the system as part of their review. But this, we do
Maximum.
maximize the opportunity.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay. I'll hand it back over to Mary.
Okay. So I know that council made the decision regarding the cloud-based server. So that amount there is just 10,200, but that will increase to 42,000. But it can also be building reserve funded as well. So that will be updated for you guys as part of the next budget update. The development charges background study is required legislatively every 5 years, and so in 2019, in order to update our bylaw prior to the expiry date, this amount is included here, and it's development charge funded for the most part.
I'm on my pet hobby here on the residential rate. I was wondering if we can look into that to see if there's anything that we can use for the residential rate.
What do you mean? Like,
Development charges background, is it appropriate to look at it?
they provide an updated rate, including residential and non-residential.
Okay, and the application of the residential rate?
Are you discussing the indexing factor?
Yes.
Oh, so I do recommend that I've already asked the consultant the question, and they said that municipalities typically use the non-residential rate when indexing.
So Councillor Sapoulis, when the consultant comes forward to make the presentation with respect to the development charges, certainly Mary has made them aware of your inquiry. You may want to have them give you a response and then seek any additional clarification once they give you that response. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so the next items, we already talked about the municipal office, so if you go to page 68, we've discussed all of these items. Okay,
Okay, so now we move to
the forecast.
forecast. So we have been, just with respect to the 2019 capital budget, if I can just get a mover and seconder just to accept the general government section.
So, Counselor, I need a mover, sorry. Counselor Ruth?
Second?
All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, so page 118 of the agenda package, please.
All right, so the 2020 capital plan summary, and I don't believe that there's anything there. You said 118, Mary?
Oh, sorry, yep, 118. So there's building there and there's corporate there.
Okay. Oh, there's building. Okay, so any questions or comments on page 118? I don't see any. Next page, 119, we have, so I guess that's the tail end of corporate at the top of it. And any questions or comments on there? Don't see any. Next page, what do we have? Don't believe that's anything for finance. All right. So, general corporate. So, page 121, we have municipal corporate there.
There's building at the top.
Oh, and building at the top. So, building and corporate services on page 121. Any questions or comments? We're still on page 122. I see. I don't see anything on page one. Is there corporate there? On page 122?
Just corporate in 2022, yeah.
Not on page
It
122.
was on page
Oh.
122. That's fine. Okay, so page 123, which is capital plan for year 2022, we have corporate. And any questions or concerns on that page? Go to page 123. I don't see anything on page 123. So on page 125, under general government, we have corporate. Do we have any questions or comments on there? No? Okay. Works. Okay, so page 127, we have corporate and finance. Do we have any questions or comments on page 127? None.
Is that where you are?
None, right. And building is at the top of that page as well. 127. So page 128, I don't see anything. So page 129, buildings at the top, we have corporate in the middle, and municipal office. Any questions or comments on page 129? Councilor
I
Spoulos?
noticed the septic inspections are every year pretty well for 6,000. Do we have to do the inspections every year?
They're not every year. I believe they're in 2020 and 2021, and then again in 2025 and 2026. And it's because under the source, Karen, can you tell me which act that is? Source Protection Act? Is that the one?
It's under that particular program that they have to do the inspections.
Every 5 years.
Any other questions or comments?
So just, that raises a question. So they can't all be done in 1 year and then 5 years? Why are they split across 2 years then at 5-year intervals?
Because I believe they were done in 2014 and 2015, and they're required every 5 years.
Well, because the first ones were split over 2 years.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Or maybe 2015 and 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Are these inspections associated with the ARCA wells? Is
Yes.
that the ones? So the question is, can we pursue Guelph to pay for these? Because they're the ones who are drawing the water and causing this costing. We've asked Kyle Ray to pursue that with City of Cambridge with respect to a similar issue there. So I'm wondering if we can ask Guelph to pick up the cost for these.
Well, there are different funding mechanisms for this program that I believe Kyle will come back and discuss with council, and one of those options include looking to the municipalities that cause the area to be defined. But I know that Kyle, I believe, I'll follow up with him just in terms of the timing of looking at the cost recovery options.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, next page. I see on page 131, we have building at the top, corporate and municipal office in the middle. Any questions or comments? No. All right. Let's see. We can skip page. All right, the next page is 133, under corporate and municipal office. Any questions or comments? None. Okay. So page 135, under general government, we have corporate and municipal office again. Any comments or questions? Okay. Projects by year, I think. We're into the schedules now, so I think, is that the,
So the projects by year is the same as what we just went through, the capital forecast, so. But if there are any questions about the report that was prepared for the capital budget, I can entertain those questions now.
Overall, the report?
Yes.
So if you don't mind, Mary, then based on that, I'll have council look at the recommendation contained in your report and put that motion on the floor, and then if they have any questions.
Sounds good. So it starts on page 48 of the agenda package.
moved by Councillor Sapoulis, seconded by Councillor Goida, that report financial 2018-035 regarding the 2019 proposed capital budget be received, and the council authorizes the use of the County of Wellington Accessibility Grant funding for the design costs associated with the accessible walking trail at Fox Run Park, and the council authorizes the use of any excess County of Wellington Trails grant funding for the construction costs associated with the accessible walking trail at Fox Run Park, and the council authorizes a single source retainer for eSolutions Group to complete website upgrades, including a new logo and brand, and to ensure a consistent website experience from desktop to mobile at the quoted cost $17,000. All in favor? Carried. is this an opportunity for them to ask questions?
Yes.
And if council has any questions for our CFO regarding her report, it'd be a great opportunity to ask her. Let me sign that or no. Councilor Spillis?
I have a general question. It's an item that wasn't covered off in our detailed capital works. This is the gravel road review, whether or not paving makes sense type of thing, and looking at that, a study to undertake the gravel roads we have, which ones are pavable and which ones are not, and looking at chip and tar versus asphalt and coming up with a recommendation on the prioritization of these. Now, I understand that we got money problems, but at the same time, if we have something in a budget that has it, say, below the line, that at least that we've invested and it's there for our residents to see. I'm sure that most of us have been canvassing. That was a big issue for a lot of people living on these gravel roads.
So are you proposing a motion to put budgetary money aside for, or just a direction to staff to?
Well, I think we have to have a consultant do the work, and in order to do that, we need a certain amount of money, and staff may be in the best position to ask somebody what would be the proper budget to include, and perhaps we can get that back to us next meeting of the capital program.
I'm looking at both Mary and Don. I'm assuming that we wouldn't be able to come up with a figure now, and then it would be appropriate for us to get that information for the next budget meeting.
Well, we do have that recommendation coming forward from UEM
Yeah.
in the asset management plan in regards
Yeah.
a way of establishing when a gravel road should be looked at.
I agree with you, but it doesn't identify our specific situation. Like you've mentioned on numerous occasions, some gravel roads we shouldn't even touch. And it doesn't address the issue of chip and tar versus pavement type of thing, that there is a considerable cost difference between the two. Even though some municipalities are doing it, our learned experience seems to say it makes sense to pave it type of thing.
I would sit here confidently and let council know that I would not recommend any gravel road without base work being done. I don't believe there's one in the township that can be done without some aspect of base work being done on it. And to go to tar and chip versus asphalt, I mean, everybody knows what my thoughts are when it comes to tar and chip. In the asset management plan, you will see that a kilometer of tar and chip is $53,000. I can pave that same kilometer of road for 58. Tar and chip, you're gonna get 8 years. Asphalt, you're gonna get 15. It's not hard to do the math on that one.
I understand that, so perhaps we can get a report on that basis. I just want something to put to bed for our residents type of thing. There's numerous residents who've asked it, and I think it's important that we address it. And two ways we can do. We can ask for a staff report, or we can ask for a consultant to do a review and come up with a detailed plan, and we'll move forward on that.
Can I ask then, perhaps, Councillor Sapoulis, would you be okay with working with staff just to draft a motion then for your next budget meeting, and we'll collect the necessary cost information based on what that draft motion says, and then council can consider it at the next budget meeting?
Sure.
Is that okay?
If I could just clarify my understanding here, because I don't disagree with what Councillor Spooler, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, did I give you permission or not?
Nope, don't care, you're fine.
Okay. I concur with Councillor Spooler that we need to have some sort of way of making this determination. But we've already contracted the engineering firm that's producing the asset management plan, and part of what they're producing are these service level standards. And I think I would like to see, to maximize our investment that we're making in this study, that that's where we should look for that guidance. That's why they were here showing us those service level standards. So those are the things that they're going to go to the public thing, and us and staff can all point to and say that's the standard at which and when we pave a road. So I'd rather make sure we use that process to its fullest, rather than having any other studies or things, because I think that's what's going to stand in the future. in managing those assets.
My concern is that we raise the expectation with the project management study, asset management study, that we indeed are going to follow up and start into this, and I don't think we're there yet. I think before anything goes into the asset management plan, we have to establish whether or not it's viable, or we're willing to spend the bucks to get into it. I don't think the asset management plan should include anything that's a nice to have.
Well, that's why we're involved in writing it, is to make sure that, I agree with you, and that's why I think staff needs to be involved in making sure that's written in such a way that clearly states not just our ability to pay, but when it becomes more affordable to pave. Because there comes a point where it does become a better investment to pave. We may never get there on any of these roads, but it means writing that standard properly.
Well, and when we come to the point where we're going to hard top a road, then we can explore the options. So if the asset management plan says this amount of use, it needs to be hard topped, then we can ask for a report saying whether it's viable to do tar and chip, or if it's an asphalt need, is kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but the asset management plan, if you say you're considering paving, that cost will not be included in the actual asset management plan?
The cost of paving gravel roads is not included in the asset replacement plan that the consultants have provided, no.
I just don't want to raise the expectation that's
I agree.
going to happen. And that's got to be couched very carefully. 'Cause
I agree.
last thing you want to do is raise the expectations and say, no, we never meant that, and then you look foolish.
I think, if I may, part of what you're asking, because I had very similar experiences during the election. When is my road going to get paved, and establishing that priority as to which roads, I guess, deserve to be paved more than others. And I think in the asset management, the proposed asset management service standards, in a way, that service standard is establishing the priority by saying, if for 2 consecutive years your road needs to be regraded more than this many times, then at that point the township would not necessarily guarantee that we're going to pave it, but we would consider paving it. And I think until that sort of 2 consecutive winters has passed, if that's what we're establishing as our service standard, we won't really know what roads are priority in paving until we've kind of gone through that 2-year process.
The caveat on that is there's some roads that are basically in swamp, and you're going to be continually regrading it, and you'll never pave it because you'll be digging out the swamp type of thing. So there's a negative side to that, but I understand where you're coming from. Perhaps a majority of the roads that works, but there are some roads will never
Yeah.
work.
The road study that's going to be completed, is it just going to be a sample of our roads, or will it be literally every road will have a traffic volume study?
The intent is that every road would have a volume done on it.
So along with the asset management plan, which is really just maintaining the paved roads we have, but that road study will kind of steer us in the right direction as to which ones, we qualify for hard top. I think we can use that as an asset to, in conjunction with the asset management plan. Do you, Councilor Bowler?
Yeah, I think this is a important enough issue that, can I recommend that staff work with the consultant to get an appropriately worded service standard for gravel roads that can be taken to the public meeting? Because we're going to go to the public meeting with this, and I agree. I'm not sure the one that's there right now is the right wording, but I understand Councillor Poulos is suggesting that perhaps we need some additional wording on this, where the road bed can support an asphalt road, whatever it is. You want some qualifiers on it. We want to have a trigger and a qualifier to make sure that we don't bind ourselves into paving an impossible road. And I think as long as we have, I just don't want to go to the public with the one we have now. I don't think Councillor Poulos does either, but
No, I'm not doing that.
but we have to go to the public with something, so if we could get something, I don't know how long, maybe Mr. Reed could tell us how long it would take to come up with something that addresses these concerns that we could put before the public in January. I think that's where we got to start with.
Okay, I'll support that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Motion for that?
Well, I don't know if Don and Mary have a clear understanding of what we're going to ask the consultant to change. So, and now is the time to do that because we want to come back with what we hope to be close to being what council wants to take to the public. So
Yes.
if there is if you want to perhaps give me that wording now, because unless, I lost Don, unless, like, I don't know what that wording should be.
Okay, along the lines of, first of all, we'll consider repaving a gravel road if the following conditions are met, bang, 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 and that's something that you and Don have to come up with.
Yeah, that's what,
And it's not a promise, it's funding, it's couched with funding available. It's also couched with things like if the ground is suitable for that sort of work.
Did you get that, Don?
No. But I'm just trying to pull it up here, and I know there is wording.
Yeah,
Don,
the
it's on
wording
page
does say that the
17.
township will consider.
Right now, it says,
It's on page
however.
17 of the agenda, just so everyone can go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It does say right now, township should consider the application of a hard surface. So maybe the word consider needs to be elaborated on more so.
Yes, I agree. They should consider, to me, is yeah, we'll look at it, but subject to funding availability, subject to the ground bed being thing, and plus whatever other conditions that Don thinks is appropriate to put in here.
Comfortable with that?
I'm looking, actually, Don, do you think there are some conditions that you would be able to come up with to send? to
Well,
the
because, I
consultant?
mean, they've already got it that, you know, that an inspection of a gravel base has already been undertaken on it. Is part of that whole thing. So that's basically saying that if you hit one of these thresholds, your first trigger would be to examine the gravel base and get it tested to see if it can support it before you would even go in there as well. So,
I think that another trigger is finances too. Like,
of course, yeah, no
so that's
question.
got to be in here.
Yeah, no question.
Okay. We can work with the consultant to word it more effectively and to include funding availability.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I know Councillor Bowman and I have had this conversation. I think we need to clarify the non-winter period in this because that's pretty vague and there's a couple different ways to look at it. So I think it needs to be clarified so everyone's on the same page that we know we're going from this date to this date.
Okay.
well, and if I
Councilor
could,
Palmer?
the one other piece that Mr. Creed and I spoke about was this doesn't mean 6 times the grader's on the road. And this is where we struggled with as well, the idea that should there be a financial trigger of how much money we spend grading it before we, in a particular year, or 2 years in a row, to trigger the resurfacing as opposed to how many times the grader is there, because there is a cost. Even a partial grading has a cost, and a partial grading has a perception by the residents that the grader's been up and down the road. So it's just whether this is the right trigger or it should be the cost of grading exceeds by X amount the cost of paving. All right? Which is really the trigger. But we're trying to get something simple here that we don't have to keep calculating.
Are you,
Yep, we can certainly do that. And it will come back for you. So I guess before we leave the actual asset management planning report, Mary will certainly provide the changes in what we've done to capital to the consultant. Is everyone fine? Like, because there wasn't a lot of discussion in terms of, I think, the reference was used as smoothing out the numbers.
Yeah, and including the revenue side, things like DCs and the asset, restore the assets plus any other revenue side.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of smoothing out of the numbers, but we're to include just the revenue component Is that correct?
Revenue component and also the peaks and valleys if there's an opportunity to spend money.
Okay.
Because if you got a high peak and relative to a valley, you're going to be borrowing money to do that, to bridge that, and I don't think you want to do that.
But the peaks and valleys are based on what the life cycle of some of the assets are.
I get
right?
that, but certainly, if pushing off a road, whether it's 62 or 64, we had one instance here where it's 65 type of thing, and 60 is the standard, there's got to be some leeway within that. And then whether or not you do a maintenance of this building 1 year earlier, 1 year later, I don't think that matters that much.
So it is going to be a living document, and so,
Understand.
yeah.
My goal in smoothing out the peaks and valley is to minimize borrowing charges. Because you do that, to manage the peaks and the valley, the only way you can overcome that besides having a constant levy, you got to borrow money to do it.
Okay.
So we will ask the consultant to the best of their ability to look at how they can perhaps,
Yeah, they could
Move some of that
Name of the game is to not borrow money, and if they can do something with the smoothing out, that's great.
Okay. As for this asset management plan, we're not making a decision on that 3% that we're going to the public with right now. It's-
no, the idea is that we have all the information that we're to request the consultant to consider before it comes back to you, before it goes back out to the public.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, and even smoothing out the peaks and valleys, I agree, perception that would, go better with the public, but, as the roads come due to be repaired, we might.
I understand
see
that,
it,
it's
but-
just that borrowing money
Yeah.
if you don't have to, doesn't make sense.
Counselor Mulmer?
Just one other question on the asset management plan. Their analysis was based on either a 1, a 2, or a 3% bump, and I believe they were talking about increasing it by 3% and then cost of living after that, not adding 3% each year. Is that correct?
It was 3% every year.
Oh, adding 3% every year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, did they do any analysis where if we phased it in, say, a 2%, the 3%, and a 4%, how does that change the lines, and can we get there without borrowing if we phase it in but end up with a higher number? I didn't know if that would make a significant difference as we take it on board or not.
They did not include that analysis.
Yeah. Could we ask them to do that, or do you think it's worthwhile?
So is council's intent that we do not borrow to replace assets?
That's the ideal, but I don't think you get away with it, to the least possible.
To minimize.
To borrow
To borrow the least,
least as
yes.
possible, yeah. But it's all dependent on when the resources come due, and, I think we just need to be cognizant of it as these are before us, and, we can rely on our Director of Public Works, whoever it may be in the future, that maybe the road isn't deteriorating at 2 points, and we might be able to offset it, a couple of years here or there. I think that would maybe be our best avenue to level out those peaks and valleys for you. Any other questions or comments for Director of Finance?
So we will just simply ask them to do their best in terms of minimizing any debt load,
Which I think, yeah, they've done pretty good at.
okay? All right. Now, I know that your operating budget is here for you for information. However, it would be helpful if, just in preparation for your operating budget, if there's anything that you want us to follow up on for your operating budget meeting that you don't already have included in your report.
So I did notice, actually, with
Yes.
Councillor Sepoulis's assistant, that there were a couple of items that did not have a 2019 budget amount. It was for fuel. I kind of missed that. So I have incorporated it in my little spreadsheet right now. It's 14,400 for fire. That should be added to the amount that I provided here, and building fuel at 1,500, which does not have a tax levy impact. But I can kind of summarize where we are tax levy-wise at this point based on the decisions that have been made thus far. So I know originally in the report that I provided, I indicated that we were at 1.40%, and this is just based on every 37,500 of taxes levied, resulting in a 1% tax impact for township portion of taxes. And so based on the decision made related to the server replacement, this will result in additional $22,260,000 of tax levy for 2019 in order to purchase the server outright. The land purchase associated with the fire station has been removed at $80,000 tax levy. I've added an approximate amount of $10,000, but it may change based on engineering cost estimates for the satellite fire station. I've added the fuel of $14,400 to fire. We actually recently received a notice, Don, if you can just elaborate more, but regarding gravel costs increasing from $1 per ton to $1.50 per ton. And Don, if you just wanted to elaborate more on that one.
Yeah, we just got notice from our gravel supplier that we're under contract with right now that the environmental fee, which is currently assessed at $1 per ton, come January 1st is then going to $1.50. We use approximately 6,000 ton of gravel. So that's money that's going to need to be added to that operating budget.
Okay, and so we've said it's approximately $3,000. And so right now, tax levy-wise, based on everything that I've explained to you guys, we're at 0.59%.
Good.
Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, that's good work. Thank you very much. And there was, I can have all the little line items I can deal with separately, but there were two things that I did want to discuss in general. One was the cost of living increase potential for council. With the loss of the 1/3 tax-free, we did last term support a fairly substantial increase in our base pay. And I'd be willing to forego the cost of living for council because it feels like a double dip if I were to take that this year after that change. I don't know how other members of council are feeling on the operations side, but to give some direction on how to cost this. Because I noticed that on the operations part of the council budget, it's getting up there, went from 80 to 100 and something. So I thought that might be some relief. And the other piece that I noticed, I can't remember which section it was under, but the aggregate levy was shown for the same amount for 2018 and 2019 on the spreadsheet, but I think I read somewhere in the report we're expecting it to almost double.
Sorry, which levy?
The aggregate levy?
Aggregate levy.
In the spreadsheet that I received, it showed us staying the same 2019, 2018.
Okay, so I can explain that more.
Okay.
So the 2019 operating budget, it's budgeted $228,000 for the aggregate levy, but also in the capital budget, we've funded a public works repaving project at $228,000.
So you've split it.
Yes, and this is in accordance with council's goals and objectives in that the aggregate levy should be ultimately funding public works projects, right?
Super. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Those are the two comments for today on that.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Lewis?
Yes, I hear that we're at a 0.5% tax levy. But at the same time, I understand we have to worry about topping up our reserves. And I'm going to suggest that if there's any space, once the county taxes are applied, in other words, last year what happened was we had a tax increase of 3%, and then the county did their magic number. We ended up with something significantly less. So I'm going to suggest that any space that's available below 2%, we go for 2% tax rate increase across the board, including Wentworth County, and the space that's available, we up our particular tax rate and put it in reserves.
I was sitting at a meeting and I believe the county's gonna come in at 2.9. That's not written in stone quite yet, but.
Okay, if that's the case, then my logic is no good then.
Oops.
Now, last year, we upped it to 3% to pick off Ulmer's, and then when the county came in, it came up significantly less than that, so we had some space there to play with. We had the same thing this year.
We'll have another meeting.
Okay, so the next step as part of the budget process is, so as you see in your report right now, we've established it based on 37,500 in additional taxes levied results in a 1% tax rate increase, but I'm in the process of receiving MPAC data to do that median assessment calculation and determining what the impact is for the typical single-family detached dwelling in the township. So in the past, we've looked at both the assessment change and the taxes levied portion to look at what the tax rate impact is for the township portion of taxes. Just wanted to provide you guys with that update.
Okay. So I have a question, because we're just discussing the proposed operating budget. For the council remuneration, specifically to my remuneration, if I were to decline the offsetting of the 1/3 tax increase, would that be discussed do I need to give you a heads up per se? Because I don't want it, I don't want that offset. I feel that with the county remuneration, for St. County Council and my current rate here, I feel that it's sufficient, but I'd like to redirect that raise into Public Works for the clothing allowance for the Public Works employees. Does that make sense? To you? Understand what I mean?
What would you like to do with the clothing allowance?
So the money that I would receive for the offsetting of the new tax implications, I don't want to receive that. So instead of that going towards me, I'd rather it go towards a budget line for the Public Works employees. Does that make sense to you? Maybe I'll come talk to you after the meeting.
Okay.
I can clarify. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I just want to pursue what Council Bulmer is saying. The rate increase for us councils includes the 3.1% plus the allowance for the fact that we're not getting the 30% or 1/3 tax break.
Exactly. The base budget includes both the 3.1% and the change in the 1/3 tax-free exemption.
Okay, and roughly what, the numbers roughly on each?
I think the report,
Like, I tend to agree with Council Bulmer, like, 2 hits seems like extravagant. I'm willing to forgo 1 hit.
Yeah, to avoid the double dip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the perception of a double dip.
Yeah.
I would have to,
So why don't we bring back to your next operating budget meeting just what that impact is, if that's okay?
Thank you.
That's fine. We can vote on it.
All right.
I think that's everything.
Moved by Councillor Bulmer, seconded by Councillor Roth, that the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 068-2018 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the Township of Portland at its meeting held on the 12th day of December 2018. All in favor? Carried.
He's gone. Oh, he's there.
I'm here.
Moved by Councillor Roth, seconded by Councillor Bulmer. The council hereby adjourns at 2:54 p.m. on December 12th. All in favor? Carried.
I have a question.